Namaste. This recording is so you can practice the new vocabulary words that we learned in class and that you can use at home every single day. So the first one, the way we say glass in Hindi is gilas. Gilas. Napkin is a super easy one because we say the same thing in Hindi, napkin. A bowl in Hindi, like if you were going to put some dal in a bowl or a cereal bowl, we say katori. Katori. Plate, we all use plates every day, right? Plate is thali. Thali. Knife, chaku. Chaku. Spoon, chammach. Chammach. And fork, kante. Kante. So if we were going to eat pizza, and assuming that you don't eat pizza with your hands, let's assume that you eat pizza with a fork and a knife, then we would use a kante and a chaku. Kante and chaku to eat pizza. What about if you were eating spaghetti with some sauce on it, so it's soggy and wet? Then you would probably use a kante, right? A kante. Now, when I eat spaghetti, I use a kante and a chammach. And some people even might use a chaku to slice some of the noodles. So with spaghetti, you might use all three, a kante, a chammach, and a chaku. What about if you were eating dal? What would you use to eat dal? Well, you put the dal in a katori, right? The dal goes in a katori and you eat it with a chammach. And if you were spreading butter on your toast, you would most likely use a chaku. Now, I heard some people sometimes have said that they use the back of a chammach, the back of a spoon. So that's also possible, but most people probably use a chaku. Now, what about popcorn? Ooh, well, this was a trick question. This is a trick question. We don't use a chaku or a chammach or a kante to eat popcorn. We use our fingers, right? We use our ungliya. Ungliya. So that's a little trick question in there for you. But what if you popped the popcorn in your microwave and now you want to share it with your friends or your family? Well, then you would distribute it and put it into katoris, right? You would have a different katori for each person. And what about if you were eating naan and some sabzi? That would go on a thali, right? You would eat it from a thali. And what about dal? If dal goes in a katori and you eat it with a chammach. What about enchiladas? If you were going to eat an enchilada, what would you eat it with? And what would you use? A kante and a chaku, right? So you would need the chaku maybe to slice it, just like a burrito. Enchiladas and burritos are kind of similar. So you would use a chaku to slice it and a kante to eat it. Now I want you to, I'm going to go through the same questions, but I want you to see if you remember the Hindi word for it. So if you were going to eat pizza, what utensils would you use? And pretend you don't eat pizza with your fingers. Pretend you actually use utensils to eat it with. Which two utensils would you use? I'm going to give you a second to say. All right, well, I hope you said kante and chaku. What about for the spaghetti? What do you use to eat spaghetti? I hope you said kante. Fork. What about for dal? If you were eating dal, out of these three things, what would you use to eat dal with? A spoon, right? How do we say spoon? I hope you said chammach. What about if we were putting butter on our toast? Out of these three things, what would you use? A fork, a spoon, or a knife? Probably a knife, right? And how do we say knife in Hindi? Chaku. And what about for your enchiladas? What would you use out of these three things? What would you use to eat an enchilada? Out of a fork, a spoon, and a knife. Well, I hope you said a fork, kante, and a knife, chaku. And if we were eating naan and sabzi, our naan and our sabzi goes on a what? What is this round thing that the naan and the sabzi sit on? A plate, right? How do we say plate in Hindi? I hope you said thali. And what about for our dal? What does our dal go inside of? I hope you said katori, a bowl. And what do we eat our dal with? A fork, a spoon, or a knife? Spoon, right? And how do we say spoon in Hindi? I hope you said chammach. And our popcorn, if we were going to put popcorn in separate bowls for our friends or our family, how do we say bowl in Hindi? I hope you said katori. And now, if you were going to have breakfast, which one do you like to eat for breakfast? Cereal, toast, or pancakes, or all of them, or two of them? What do you like? I want you to go through and think about each one. So, what do you eat cereal with? A spoon, a fork, or a knife? A spoon, right? And how do we say spoon? I hope you said chammach. And what do we put our cereal in? In a bowl, right? How do we say bowl? Katori. And what about for our toast? We put butter on our toast, right? And what do we use to put the butter on our toast? A knife. And how do we say knife in Hindi? Chaku. And for our pancakes, our beautiful pancakes with gooey syrup on them, what do we use to eat pancakes? A fork, a spoon, or a knife? Well, most people probably use a fork and a knife, right? And how do we say fork in Hindi? Kante. And knife? Chaku. All right, and we also learned some of these beverages in Hindi, right? Everybody, I think, has heard the word for water, pani. Pani is how we say water in Hindi. And milk, I think most people have probably heard this word too. We say duddu, duddu. And for chocolate milk, we say chocolate duddu, chocolate duddu. And for apple juice, well, apple in Hindi we say seb, seb. And juice in Hindi we say juice. So the way we say apple juice in Hindi, we say seb ka juice. Seb ka juice. One more time. Seb ka juice. And what that means is juice of apple. Juice of apple. Seb ka juice. So, I hope that you will practice all of these new vocabulary words, and these are words that you can use every day, right? Because these are all things that we use every day. Pani, we drink water every day. We use forks and spoons and knives. Gate, chammach, chaku, plate, thali, glass, gilas, napkin, napkin, bowl, katori. These are things that we use every day, right? So I want you to be conscientious that while you're at home, to think about these words. Like if you wanted to ask someone for a spoon, may I please have a spoon? So instead of saying spoon, substitute out the word spoon for chammach. Say, may I please have a chammach? May I please have a kante? May I please have a katori? May I please have duddu? May I please have pani? May I please have a thali? May I please have a gilas? So, I hope you'll practice this, and I will see you later.